Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter, at Damn Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Quentin Tarantino's 2019 film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The movie is set in 1969 and follows the friendship of 1950s TV star Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his former stunt double, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, as they attempt to stay relevant in Hollywood while Dalton battles alcoholism. Their journey leads them to Charles Manson's ranch, multiple TV guest spots by Dalton starring in spaghetti westerns, and even a fight between Booth and Bruce Lee. Realizing he can no longer afford Booth's services, Dalton informs him they'll need to go their separate ways, but they decide to have one last night of heavy drinking together. 3 of Manson members soon arrive at the house to kill them, but Dalton and Booth eventually gain the upper hand, killing them with the help of a dog and a flamethrower. Couple things before we get your opening thoughts here, John. Ethan, really happy to have you back for this one. We know how big of a Tarantino fan you are, so we couldn't have done this podcast without hearing some of your comments. And one more thing, John, before we get your opening thoughts, maybe you can speak to this. Some people might be upset with this one because it really can't be categorized as a horror film, but yet here we are, a horror podcast, doing an episode on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Just some thoughts on that before we get into your opening thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, my thought on that is that I love films in general.
As do I.
Right? So I, too, am a huge Quentin Tarantino fan. This is a great movie. It's a relevant movie. This is our show, and we're going to do what we want.
And we kind of mentioned that on an earlier episode, I can't remember which one, that we're going to do a whole slew of movies, and the vast majority of them are obviously going to be horror movies.
For sure.
But there's going to be some other ones that we're going to do just because we love them. And after seeing this one in theaters, how could we not do an episode on this movie?
We had to talk about this one.
So let's get your opening thoughts then, John.
Well, I think we already established that I loved it. I thought it was great. The entire time, I did not take my eyes from the screen. I loved it. I totally geeked out about it. And I still think about it after I leave, right? And when you leave a theater and you're still thinking about the movie weeks after you've seen it, that is a profound and powerful film, and I have nothing but good things to say about this. But on a side note, I would like to say congratulations to Ethan. He's got accepted to Toronto Film School. So,
I had no idea about this.
Yeah.
Ethan, congratulations. That's amazing. So you start in September.
In October.
You start in October. So a month ago, and then you'll be at the film school doing great things. That's amazing. Congratulations, Ethan.
That's right. So now his thoughts on Quentin Tarantino.
Let's hear it, buddy.
This was my most anticipated movie of the year, and I was not let down. It is so far my favorite movie of 2019. I don't think the only thing that kind of maybe a little bit comes tiny bit close is Endgame. Everything else compared to this is nothing.
And they're 2 very different films.
Yeah, they are too. I just based it off how I felt when I left the theater, and I just had a profound love for this movie. It was excellent in every single category. The aesthetic, I absolutely loved it. I thought Tarantino did a great job capturing what, maybe not necessarily what it was like in 1969, but what people remember what it was like in 1969.
The nostalgia of it.
100%, right? Like, with the KHJ radio show, they had those advertisements like the Illustrated Man and like Mug Root Beer and stuff like that. The cars, the way people talked, the way people acted, movie theaters, just everything was spot on, perfect, and I loved it. And I just love this movie.
And you know what? Just to speak to what you just said there, Ethan, I thought it captured it perfectly. Now, obviously, I wasn't alive in the 60s and 69, but I also haven't heard any...
Neither was I, even though Kyle makes jokes about it.
I thought you were already working at that point.
No.
But I haven't heard anything come out where they're like, no, like, you know how people come out later and they're kind of like the fact checkers or whatever.
Yep.
And they're like, no, this is ridiculous. That wasn't invented then. This wasn't there then. I haven't heard anything like that come out about this movie.
I know you might have Neil deGrasse Tyson say those weren't the stars for 1969 in Southern California, but
okay,
he hasn't done that yet. So
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, like, yeah, there are some fact checkers, and I like it when Neil does that because it's pretty funny.
No, it is.
But I want you to ask Ethan how many times he's seen this since it's been released.
You've seen it more than once?
I've seen it 3 times so far.
That's a lot of Tarantino Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie viewing time, because the running time is 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Around there, yeah.
So
I don't regret a single second I spent in that theater watching that movie.
oh my gosh, so that's a long time. But you know what? I don't know if I could have seen it 3 times already. Maybe I'm not as big of a fan as you are, Ethan. But as John said kind of in his opening thoughts there, I was glued to the screen the entire time as well. There wasn't 1 second where I was looking at my watch and being like, oh my gosh, we're in the hour 3 here. When is this going to be over? Like, I was very intrigued, very interested the whole entire time through. And then kind of at the end of the movie, I turned to my buddy, or he turned to me. He's like, what was that movie even about? And I'm like, I don't know, but I was interested in every second of it.
Here's what I really, really loved about it. So before I get into that, so Inglourious Basterds provided an alternate history ending, right?
Yeah.
Right? So about Hitler and the theater, all that type of stuff, right? So I knew, the Manson family murders. I knew what that was all about. I knew what would happen. You were introduced to Sharon Tate earlier in the film, and played by Margot Robbie. She's just great to watch, right? Like, she's just great to watch. So, and not because she's attractive. She's a hell of a great actor. She's just good to watch. She's also attractive, yes, but I just mean that's not the reason why for me anyways.
Fair enough.
I'm just saying, so I know what happens. So through the whole movie, because I didn't see any spoilers or anything like that, so I didn't know it was an alternate ending one. I suspected, but I didn't know. Like, I didn't even suspect.
Oh, you suspected? I had no idea.
No, sorry, I didn't suspect. I just thought it was a possibility.
Well, if you have seen Inglourious Basterds, you know that it is possible that he kind of changes history.
This is a hard topic to cover. This was a very, very brutal murders that happened in Hollywood. It's a very sensitive topic to cover. Not that Quentin Tarantino cares about sensitivity of topics. I'm just saying it's one of those ones where it needs to be approached with respect and levity, right? Like, not levity, but with well,
because real people died.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of the tension in that film was wondering what was going to happen in the end. Like, how was he going to address the murder of Sharon Tate?
Because you knew you were going that direction.
Yeah, right. So I knew it was coming there. So a lot of that suspense was brought there, and then you're introduced to these 2 awesome characters and their character development throughout that whole film. Every scene, every dialogue, every part of that action in that film led to that ending. Like, all of it was building to the reality of that ending, and I thought it was superbly done. Even the Bruce Lee scene, everyone's like, well, why was that even in there? I know why it was in there. So, and it was superbly done. I loved every part of that film.
The acting was absolutely incredible. Obviously Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are 2 of the best actors in the world, but just their ability to pull off this bromance movie. It felt like they had known each other for decades. Like, it was absolutely incredible, the job that they did, and in all the different spots. One scene that particularly stands out to me, and Brad Pitt isn't in this one, this is Leo's scene, is when it's kind of a prolonged scene for that, he gets cast as the villain in the show. I think it was called Lancer. And it's that prolonged scene that they're filming, and he forgets his lines and then comes out of character and, oh, I forgot my line, give me the line, and then is back in there acting and is flipping back and forth. Like, I thought that was incredible.
One of my favorite scenes, it's one of my top 3 scenes in a movie, is after he finishes doing the evil thing with the little girl, and the little girl walks up to him, and she's like, that was the best acting I've ever seen in my entire life. And then he loses it because he starts crying because it just meant so much to him. And I love that scene. It's just fantastic.
Just him being able to pull that out of himself, right? And just and with that scene and with the one just before that I described, the prolonged scene, I can only imagine how difficult that would have been to film. Like, that was a long sequence. Same with that sequence, another great job of acting when Brad Pitt kind of goes to the Manson ranch. That was an incredibly long scene as well, and I can only imagine how they were able to put that together. I just thought it was some incredible stuff through and through. One thing that John kind of just mentioned, though, that I want to go back to, the Bruce Lee scene. Very interesting scene, kind of weird. But, John, you said you thought there was a reason behind that scene? Like, you saw something there. Ethan, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, the reason was to show how good he is at fighting for later, when he beats up the 3 hippies that come in.
Okay,
so
the point of it. just to show Brad Pitt's fighting
Yeah, because
skills.
Bruce Lee is the greatest fighter of all time. And
Allegedly.
And he held his own against Bruce Lee.
Fair enough. And so, John, were you going to say the exact same thing to that?
Okay,
Yeah.
Can I throw in a fun fact? Okay. In the original script, Tarantino had Cliff Booth win against Bruce Lee.
Oh.
But then the stunt like coordinator and Brad Pitt were both like, no way, man. He's Bruce Lee. We can't do that. Like, there's no way that can ever happen. So then they switched it.
Where it was kind of a draw and then got broken up.
What was a draw, yeah.
And so, John, what were your thoughts there on that scene?
I like that fun fact. That's really cool.
That is a cool fact.
Yeah, I like it. So that was my whole thing. At the end of it, he's high on acid, and these 3 people come into his home, and
doesn't he say to them, like, "Are you really here?" Or
yeah,
something like
right. Like, he's messed up. So throughout that movie, like when he punched that guy's teeth out at the ranch, everything was to show, one, how capable he is at fighting, and so like at the end when there's people coming in your house with home invasion with a gun and a knife, and you don't freak out and cower in a corner and cry. There's a reason for that, and they've showed you that. They've built his character up through that.
that he wasn't he wasn't just some guy who could take falls or do stunts. He was some guy who could actually fight.
Yeah, he's a guy that would walk into a crowd of 20 people to go check on a blind guy in a house.
Yeah.
All these people staring at him. You don't know if they're going to swarm him or not. He just walks in anyways. He's not afraid. He feels confident in his capabilities to deal with any situation. And then when it comes to punching that guy's teeth out, and with the same thing with Bruce Lee, right? He's like, yeah, I'll fight you, and he does, and because he's confident and and it's all that is just to build to that ending scene.
No, and it makes sense what you're saying there, that to build towards that ending scene. My one issue with that Bruce Lee scene, and I can't tell you whether this is true or not, because obviously I didn't know Bruce Lee, but I really felt like his portrayal there, it made him look like just this like pompous imbecile almost.
So here's the thing. Joe Rogan. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about that scene. So he was talking about that scene with Brendan Schwab, right? They're doing their MMA show.
Yep.
And it was Joe Rogan brought up really good points. And when it comes to fighting and stuff, like, he knows what he's talking about. He knows way more than I'll ever do. So he didn't have a problem with the fight between Brad Pitt and Bruce Lee. He was like, if a bigger guy knows how to fight, so if there's 2 people that know how to fight and one's bigger than the other, more often than not, the bigger guy's going to win that fight. It's just the way it is.
No, I hear you.
Right? So when they portray Brad Pitt as someone that can fight, him holding his own against Bruce Lee, not a problem. He didn't have an issue with. But what he did have an issue with is what you just brought up, was that Bruce Lee is, from all intents and purposes, evidence-wise, from the books that he read, the philosophy that he's written, books that he wrote, the philosophy that he's written, and the martial arts style he created, an intelligent and humble man.
Because a true martial artist doesn't go and pick fights or run his mouth or things like that.
And he totally ran his mouth in that.
Yeah.
So,
but I understand the comedy to the scene. It did add comedy to the scene, but this is a real person we're talking about.
No, and that's what Joe Rogan had an issue with. Brandon didn't care. He goes, it's part of the movie, it's a device. People who know fighting know that's not Bruce Lee, and that's fine. Maybe the family would be pissed about it, but it's like, so what? If you want to know more about Bruce Lee, find out more about Bruce Lee. He was an awesome man. He was a smart man. And that's not how he's portrayed. But they're saying he was using Quentin Tarantino was using the Bruce Lee from the movie Enter the Dragon when he was like giving the speech about when he's have you ever seen the movie Enter the Dragon, the American one?
I haven't seen it, no.
So Bruce Lee made a bunch of movies, right? So the one that was the first Americanized, like produced by an American company, because before that it was all Chinese companies. He was a teacher. Like at the opening scene, he was a teacher, and then later on, he was like showing off in front of all these other martial artists. So he was using that character from that movie as the Bruce Lee portrayed in this film. But it's not the Bruce Lee that was in real life, right? So it's like the character Bruce Lee was portraying in another film. That's what he exemplified in this film.
Oh,
right?
okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in one movie, Bruce Lee was kind of acting arrogant as a martial artist, but it was in the movie, it was to get the bad guy to notice him, right? So it was a tool in that movie. But from what I understand, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it's what I read, Quentin Tarantino used that arrogance from that film, that character from that film, and put it in this film
To make the Bruce Lee character for this movie here.
for the fight to even happen, because he wanted this Bruce Lee fight to happen, and how are you going to have it happen?
You needed someone to pick the fight with Brad Pitt's character, because Brad Pitt's character wasn't one to pick fights. He was one that wouldn't shy away from fighting, but he wouldn't be one to instigate it. So how do you make the fight happen between Bruce Lee and Brad Pitt if neither one instigates? So you need one of them too.
Exactly.
So there you go, right, Ethan? You agree with that?
Yeah. We spent like 8 minutes on this, so let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I just had something to talk about. Well, okay, right. What did you think about Leo DiCaprio's 14/5 of McCluskey scene?
Sorry,
The flamethrower part.
Oh, at the very end.
At the beginning.
Oh, at the very beginning. Yeah. Ridiculous.
How awesome was that?
Well, I thought the end was ridiculous too. That he had the
that was
flamethrower,
awesome.
right?
Yeah, that was awesome. But I just love the original. It was exactly what 1960s American war films were.
Yeah.
And oh, it's so great. No, I love Leo DiCaprio in that movie, and I think he did a great job. And I think, but Tarantino putting the movies that he did, and showing clips from it really helped his character a lot to prove that he was a has-been. He didn't have to say it, he did, but it proved it.
And I loved that editing job they did with The Great Escape.
Oh, that was amazing,
When
wasn't
they put him in for Steve McQueen's character there, wasn't it? Was it?
Yeah, Steve McQueen.
Yeah, they put him right in the movie, like, oh, I heard you were up against him, and then they kind of flash what it would have looked like if Leo was in it. I think that's just cool that they can use technology with that. But just while you bring up the flamethrower here, what a way to end the film with the kind of the flamethrower death. And as we said at the beginning, this isn't a horror movie, but you know what? Any movie that pretty much ends with someone being killed with the flamethrower like that, it can be talked about on a horror podcast, don't you think?
Hell yeah, man. That whole thing, that whole ending scene was just awesome, because I wasn't, like Dad said, I wasn't sure if he was going to change history, but I knew it was a possibility because he's not afraid to, clearly.
And so with this and Inglourious Bastards, he did change history, but he's almost giving the audience the ending that they want.
Yeah,
like in Inglourious Bastards, you want Hitler to die. In this, you want the Manson crew to be killed.
It was so brutal. It was awesome, man. I loved this whole ending.
And so with you, Ethan, being the big Tarantino fan, do you see more of the same coming from him in any future movies? Like, do you see him just changing history, or do you think this is this maybe he will, maybe he won't type of thing?
I don't know. He says he's only going to make 10 movies. This is his 9th. I'm calling bullcrap on the 10 movies thing. He loves doing it too much, but you never know. I hope if he makes more historical stuff, he will continue to change it, because it's cool to see someone else's take on it, right? And I just love the ending conversation between Rick Dalton and Sharon Tate. It's just amazing, right? And the whole in Jay Sebring, right? That whole how it ended was amazing, right? I loved every instance of it. So if he does continue to make things based in history, I hope he continues to change them, because it's awesome to see. It's just great to see.
And he's done such a good job of it, right?
100%.
Now, John and Ethan, I want to hear your thoughts too. But John, let's get your thoughts on this first. I don't know if you've heard this. There has been a little bit of criticism out there about the film, just in terms of Tarantino's choice not to give Margot Robbie that many lines. So she had very few lines in the movie, and there were some accusations of it being a little sexist. What were your thoughts on that, John?
I don't even like to talk about silly stuff like that.
Did you hear the criticism out there?
No, and that's ridiculous. It's like, it's so silly. Like, I know why, right? Because he's creating distance from the audience to Sharon Tate, because we're all expecting her to die at the end. So they're just showing little snippets of her and short snippets of her and how, what a good person she was, what a genuine person she was, what the delight she was to watch, and so he was projecting, he was keeping the distance from the audience to her because it was a, I can't even speak right now. It's a way to build tension towards the end, because like every part of this movie was propping up the end, like the flamethrower. Like they introduced a flamethrower at the beginning, and then you know what? He has it in the shed, and he told someone he had it in the shed. So when it came out at the end, all built up to that end.
And
I don't like those criticisms. I think they're weak attacks.
It was almost like they were looking for something to be
yeah,
outraged
you know what I
about.
mean. And it's a way to get attention for yourself. I don't know if this is true of these people. I don't know. They could be genuinely upset or believe this. But I think I don't think it's a good way to get attention. I think if you're going to attack someone's work, it should be, and there's nothing glaringly sexist or racist or any type of ism about it, then it should be about how, maybe they didn't do a shot right, or this, or there was continuity issues, like this shot over here didn't translate to this part over here, or this breadcrumb here didn't lead to here. You know what I mean? It should be something that's actually technical or real, not something that you can just throw out there and not support. And you can't support that accusation. There's no evidence to it.
Especially since even though she maybe not had a ton of lines, but she had a ton of screen time, and ultimately, this is his movie.
Exactly.
He can do whatever he wants. He can have whatever actors, whatever actresses he wants in there. He can have them have as many lines as they want because it's his film. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. But your answer is very good about how there was an intention behind it to build that distance.
Yeah, I think the device. Quentin Tarantino's very good at what he does. Like, there's no goddamn doubt about it, and you could see that from this film. That's why Ethan went to see it 3 times, and I'm gonna go see it again. I know I'm gonna go see it again, and I know like a lot of people are talking about this film, and you know how like there'd be a popular song out, and like everyone loves this popular song, but you always have that small percentage. I hate that song, and they actually secretly like it. You know what I mean? But they just want to be that different person. Yeah. You're gonna have those people for this too.
Who are contrary to it, right?
Just contrary, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have an issue with that. But I like it to be based on something real and not just because you feel like it.
And just looking to be outraged. And
yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. Now, Ethan, had you heard this criticism out in the media a little bit?
Yeah, I watched the video, actually, where the first person to bring it up at Cannes back in May. And all Tarantino said was, I reject your hypothesis.
And you know what? He didn't even have to say that much. Because as I said, it's his film, right?
Yeah, and then Margot Robbie defended it. But yeah, no, that is totally, completely right. And even though she didn't have a lot of speaking lines, you're right. She had a lot of screen time. And what Tarantino showed was that she was just a kind, genuine, amazing person. And I don't see how in any form that can be disrespectful to Sharon Tate's memory or sexist in any way. And it doesn't make sense to me.
And I agree with you as well. Just want to get both your thoughts on that. This movie, obviously, Ethan, you've really enjoyed it. John enjoyed it. I liked it. Critics liked it. 85 on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, 70. So I was a little bit surprised on that. I guess with Tarantino, you either love him or you hate him, and maybe some people just don't like his storytelling style. I don't know. Can you think of a reason why 30% of moviegoers didn't like this film?
Well, it didn't have a story.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's kind of not about anything.
It's not about
anything.
It's
very interesting,
dude. Like, yeah, I've spent almost 6 hours. No, more than 6 hours.
Almost. I'd say 8 hours.
Yeah,
over 8 hours.
8 hours in a theater watching this. And I was never once bored. So I absolutely loved it. Some people, they look for a story and they look for things to not like about it. And so they're just going to go in and they're going to be like, it wasn't about anything, so it sucked.
Yeah, looking to be that contrary voice like John just brought up here.
Yeah.
And so, John, what are your thoughts on that? 85 for critics and 70 for audience members?
So for me, I'm more like, okay, so what was the audience looking for, right? So when you look at all the other Tarantino movies, right? They're uber violent with great dialogue, right? Great dialogue, great scene setting, great shot pictures. Like there's a lot of stuff like that. So this is not your typical Quentin Tarantino movie. the only uber violence happened was at the end. So you're waiting a long time for that. And I totally disagree with there's no story to this. There's definitely a story to this.
Serious
the story
bromance.
to this, no, that's good. That's true. A good bromance. But the story to this is Sharon Tate was murdered by a bunch of maniacs, and this is an alternate view of that, or an alternate happening of that. That's the story.
Like a parallel reality, yeah.
I think it's a great story because, like I said, throughout the whole film, I was expecting. I didn't like a.
We just
talked
didn't
about it
know
before.
how Brad Pitt and Leo were going to play into that ending.
Yeah, you know what, but I knew what the movie was about. I knew that there's something horrendous that was going to happen, and from history, it happened to this poor woman, right? And I didn't know how he was going to address that, and there was that tension throughout the whole movie, and like I said, showing Sharon Tate through the snippets that they did show, like you like this person. You didn't want any harm to come to this person. So it's helped by building that tension, right? And I disagree. I think there was a great story here. And I couldn't stop watching it.
And I think it's pretty easy to say that all three of us would be in the 90s here. Like, Ethan, are you close to 100?
I am 100.
I love it.
I'm 110 out of 100.
I love it. John?
I am 99.
99. I'm not that high, but I'm in the 90s. I like this movie. I don't have bad things to say about it. Budget. The budget came in at about $95 million. As of the recording of this podcast, box office 108, but that's growing. It's going to be much bigger than that. Apparently, the studio has spent about $110 million additional dollars marketing the film worldwide. But when you add the budget together and the marketing money, I'm sure that it'll surpass it, especially when you talk about the longevity
movie,
of this movie going on streaming services and things like that. So I'm sure the studio's not worried.
This movie's going to be in the theaters for a lot longer because I just hearing people talk about it. It's one of those things like Quentin Tarantino put a movie out a while ago, right? And if you're not, a lot of people are in the mindset, what have you done for me lately? Right? So a lot of people didn't even know who this guy was. And now they're talking about him again. Like he's shooting up there, he's trending and all that type of stuff. There is a buzz going with this. This movie is going to be in the theaters for a long time.
Especially if it starts to get nominated for awards. And then it's going to extend its theater stay.
Oh, it totally will. And then you're going to look at Blu-ray sales. Like, who's not going to buy this on Blu-ray?
Oh, anyone there's tons of Tarantino fans like Ethan here who's going to buy it for sure, right?
He might buy 4 copies. But for me, I'm just like saying, I love this film. It's so good. It's so good. I still think about it.
And interestingly enough, his best ever opening weekend.
40 million, yeah.
Yeah. I got 41.1, highest ever. I was a little surprised with that because of all the great movies he's made, but still, that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
One interesting fact that I found here is for Sony Pictures, in order for them to secure the rights to distribute the film, they had to agree to a bunch of Tarantino's demands. And so some of his demands for this movie was that it had to have a $95 million production budget. He had to have the final cut, and he had to have, in quotation marks here, extraordinary creative controls. Plus, he wanted 25% of first dollar gross. And so I had to look up what that meant. And so what that meant is he gets 25% of every dollar made on this movie, not just profit, every single dollar, which is like outrageous. Like they would rarely do that. And then lastly, his last demand is that the rights to the movie had to revert to him after 10 to 20 years. So he had some pretty high list of demands from here, and Sony obviously followed through with it just based on who he is. One thing that I mentioned to you, John, earlier, and Ethan, I don't know if your dad passed this on to you, but for Brad Pitt's role, another actor who was up for it, Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I read that.
How wild would that have been? Leo and Tom Cruise on screen together. I'm not saying that Brad Pitt did a bad job, but I'm just imagining in another universe where that movie gets made.
Yeah, I guess because I've seen Brad Pitt in the role, I'm thinking Tom Cruise would suck. But I don't know. If Brad Pitt was never in it, maybe it would have been good. I can't tell you.
No, fair enough. Another interesting thing I found here, Burt Reynolds was originally cast in the role as George Spahn, but he died before his scenes could be filmed. And then another connection, Dalton's relationship with Cliff Booth was actually based on that of actor Burt Reynolds and his longtime stunt double, Hal Needham. So there's kind of those links between there.
Well, but that's why Tarantino wanted him in.
Exactly, to
Yeah.
kind of pay tribute to him a little bit, right? And then also another thing that I loved is that Tarantino isn't afraid to borrow from things that have already been done. So the guy who played Charles Manson, his name is Damon Harriman. My apologies if I'm saying that wrong. But Harriman also portrayed Manson in the show Mindhunter.
Yep.
So he had done the role before. And then as well, Madisy Beatty portrayed Patricia Katie Krenwinkel, who was a Manson family member, and she had previously played that on the show Aquarius with David Duchovny. So it's just cool that
Well, like you can see him steal from stuff like that for and I'm thinking of spaghetti westerns right now. Nebraska Jim is clearly Navajo Joe, which is directed by Sergio Corbucci, who directed it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood too. So he pays a lot of homages to that type of stuff, right? And Navajo Joe starred Burt Reynolds. Fun fact, but yeah.
Yeah. No, just a lot of cool stuff about this movie. And I just love the vast amount of actors that Tarantino can get for this movie. Even actors to play small parts. Even actors who eventually get cut out of the movie. Like he had Tim Roth, James Marsden, and Danny Strong shot scenes for this movie, and they were just cut from the movie completely.
The first cut was 4 hours and 20 minutes long.
Seriously?
Yeah, I would have watched every second.
Do you think that footage is ever going to get released?
I don't know. I'm gonna buy it on Blu-ray. Hopefully, it's on the special features part.
Now, John, I know that you're usually not a fan of deleted scenes, extended scenes, but as much as you love this movie,
I'd watch it.
You'd be willing to check that stuff out?
As long as they did okay, this is the original 4 hour and 20-minute cut. Like, I don't like watching the film and then going into it afterwards. Oh, this is the scene that would have been in. I don't like doing that because it's separate from the film, and you lose, for me anyways, you lose the continuity or you lose the immersion.
No, and that makes complete sense. So I wanted to throw it to you guys for kind of the end here. What other stuff did you have to bring up about this movie? Anything else there, John?
No, I have no.
You've
no
kind of
issues.
said your piece. Well, what about our true Tarantino fan here?
Let's see what he
Ethan?
has to say.
I actually have one thing. That we talked about when we walked out of the theater was the Kurt Russell narration at the end.
Yeah.
I was not a fan. That was the one thing I didn't love about this movie.
So kind of when he went to Italy to film the spaghetti westerns.
Here, the reason I didn't like it was because you got all the information that Kurt Russell said just from watching the screen.
Okay.
He did the same thing in Hateful Eight. He had the narration. Didn't need the narration. You got all the information he was telling you just from watching it. You didn't even have to recut it. You could have just taken out the narration. The audience would have had the same amount of information. It's just exposition for exposition's sake, and it seems like Tarantino doesn't trust his audience there, which I don't like.
So when John, you had first brought this up to me, my reply to you, and it's because I'm dumb, I'm like, oh, yeah, he was just a narrator. What's wrong with having a narrator? And then, John, you said to me, well, no, he played a different character in the movie, and how would that character know all these facts? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, right? So I guess, Ethan, I hear what you're saying there. John, looking at it back now, do you still have those same issues with the narration?
Yeah, like, once again, like, we always talk about this is like the minuscule of minuscule for me, right? Like, I couldn't care less. What it did was make me raise one eyebrow, go, huh, right? That's about it. Didn't take away from it. Like, and Ethan knows I'm a huge non-fan of expositions, right? I don't like it. I don't like when people come in, like the evil bad guy tells you everything that he's going to do at the end. I hate that.
Yeah, you're in the spot where you're going to meet your doom, but before you meet your doom, I'm going to explain everything to you and then let you escape.
And yeah, or even not even that. If they have to explain all that to you in a long speech, they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's my point on it. So, but I know and I totally agree with Ethan, all that information was available without the narration. And secondly, my real issue was he was a character in the film, and what would he care if this guy's going over to Italy, and why would he talk over the film at that point? Why would he even know this stuff? They were never really close, right? There was just more like he hired Brad Pitt as a favor to Leo, but after that, it's not like they were good friends or anything like that. So there's no reason for him to have that. But I do think that when Quentin Tarantino pays homages to the older films that he loves, there are a lot of over voice narrations of these films, and I think he just likes them aesthetically or even whatever. I think he just likes them. But I don't know him, and I couldn't tell you if that's true or not.
And me personally, I didn't have a problem with the narration, but when you brought up that point, I can't argue it, but it just didn't really bug me that much.
I have a question for you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Do you think Cliff Booth killed his wife?
100% yes.
You do?
100% I believe he killed
Yeah,
his wife.
I thought he did too. I 100%
But you
thought
know,
he
it was
did
back
too.
in, I don't know, well, this was based in the 60s, but so maybe it's the 50s when he did it. I guess a different time. I don't know. Like, weird, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. The police stuff was not nearly as sophisticated as it's today. That whole thing reminded me a lot of. You ever heard of Natalie Wood?
Yeah.
How she died?
Okay.
It reminded me a lot of that.
And he probably borrowed from that, right?
Yeah, because there was questions as to whether or not her husband murdered her or not. So that's what it reminded me of when I was watching.
And so you felt, Brad Pitt did kill her?
Well, yeah. He left it open for a reason, so we could have this discussion. That's why he left it open.
Yeah.
I'm going for it. I'm thinking he did. Yeah.
John?
I didn't really care. I just thought it was part of the character development.
But what
Right.
if you had to go one side or the other? Did he kill her or did he not?
I don't know.
Okay.
And here my thing on it is like, so you look at his character, so he goes to the house to check on Spawn, and he's gonna risk getting into a brawl with like 40 strangers to make sure that this guy is okay. And he drives this young girl home, and she offers to give him a blowjob, and he's like, "No, you're a young girl. I don't want anything to do with you." He's a good guy. So it's kind of like I have an issue reconciling all those things that he does out of the goodness of his heart with murdering someone he married.
Yeah, how could somebody who's a good person kill their wife?
Yeah. So like well,
Well, maybe I'm wrong then.
No, I'm just saying that's my only issue with it, because typically in real life that could absolutely happen. Some guys do one terrible thing or maybe a couple terrible things, but these are the same guys that will hold the door open for you when you're walking into the mall and you're carrying stuff. No one's evil all the time. No one's bad all the time, right? So it's very true that he could have killed his wife, and then he still has a good character at heart, right? That is a possibility. I'm just saying, in movie terms, they try not to do that, right? They try to give you, this is who this person is, so when they make a decision later on, it makes sense to you, right? So for me, I'm like, what it showed me was that for character development is that he doesn't have much left. He has his dog, he has his trailer, and he has his good friend.
Amazing dog, by the way.
Yeah, and he's going to do whatever he can for his best friend.
Fair enough.
That's the way I looked at it. So I didn't really care.
Well, fellas, I know we've gone a little bit long on this one, but this was a long movie. So I'm going to give each of you one last chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace on this one. Anything else to say there, Ethan, about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I wish I had brandy.
John?
I think Ethan might disagree with me on this. It's just like the impact of it, right? So the impact of Pulp Fiction, right? Amazing, great film. So influential, right? There's just the impact of everything. It was just so good. They're so different. It could just be the way that I am now, but I love this movie. I love it.
So,
I'm like it's up there with Pulp Fiction for me.
As one of your favorite ever movies?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Ethan, is this number one for you? I know you ranked it at 100. Is this your favorite ever movie?
No, it goes Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, Once in Hollywood for my Tarantino.
Okay.
Once in Hollywood, I don't think this one breaks my top 10 ever.
Okay, but it's still an amazing movie. That you love.
Amazing, absolutely amazing movie. I disagree with the impact thing because I wasn't alive to see the impact it had. I can look back and see it now, but the reason I love Pulp Fiction is because of how shocking it was to me, and I didn't and I loved Hollywood. I didn't get that same shock value as Pulp Fiction gave me.
No, and I agree, because it was the same shock value as it is for you, for how you impact it. I just mean like for when I was watching that film, like just the aesthetics of it, everything that was done, the flow of it. It was just the dialogue. Like I love it, man. It was so good. And his top 10 films are top 10 films for him for different reasons. He's looking at it from a director's eye.
Well, everyone's going to have a different list.
Yeah, no, I know it. That's true, but it's like he's more technical is what I mean, right?
Oh, okay.
With Orson Welles, right? All that stuff. Like Orson Welles is a great director. He made me watch one of his films, and I absolutely agree. He was a gazillion years ahead of his time. He was so good. But yeah, but he's judged it on different things.
Fair enough. Well, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram @DamnMovies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers, and his new novella, Balance, is also available on Amazon. You can pre-order John's newest full-length novel, Off the Grid, right now at blackrosewriting.com. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Not a problem. And everyone out there listening, thank you again. Have a great week. Be kind to everyone.